Hi, I'm Tim Ives from UK. Get ready for your unofficial dental hygiene podcast.
These are the tales of two hygienists, one East Coast RDH and one West Coast hygienist. Listen as they tackle the profession of dental hygiene with humor and enthusiasm. Now, please join Michelle Strange and Andrew Johnston as they tell you a tale of two hygienists.
Hi, Michelle.
What's up, Andrew?
Nothing. Episode 88. That's what we're doing today.
Oh, that's like my lucky number. 8s are my numbers.
No.
Totally.
Do you know who else has 8s as their good numbers?
Who?
Michael.
My best buddy?
No. My brother. That guy.
Are you saying he's not my buddy?
Well, I'm saying he's my brother first.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because you're so much older than I am, I guess technically, you guys could have been buddies before I was a brother. But
True. I'm feeling my age right now, actually.
yeah. So tell me about this place that you guys went to.
So I had a auntie play date because I have, 3 nephews. The middle one's birthday was in July, and I have literally, when we were in Montana, and I've literally been traveling since then. So I didn't get to see him. So we have auntie play dates, and this one, of course, was, in honor of his belated birthday. So we went and did we call it Velocity Air Sports or something like that. I'm sure everyone has something like that in their town, but it's like the trampolines and then the basketball dunking and the foam pits where you do trapeze, like the circus things, and ropes that you tightrope kind of walking stuff. And then they have a ninja course.
Of course.
Like the Ninja Warrior, whatever that you
American
watch.
Ninja Warrior.
Yeah, that's. I have a lot of respect for those people right now. A lot.
Because all the trapezing and the jumping on trampolines.
It was ridiculous. But the first jump, I think I told you earlier, I was suddenly very aware of all of my joints and immediately wanted to take a glucosamine. I was like, what? Am I missing synovial fluid? What's wrong right now? Everything's creaking, popping. My spine is screaming at me. And then we had the Japanese steakhouse where they cook in front of you.
Yeah.
He loved it. He was so excited.
Did you do flipping the little pieces of shrimp and all that kind of stuff?
Yes. Yeah. Tried to catch it in the mouth, all that kind of craziness. And so I picked him up from school and we went and did all that. So he's going to be super tired tomorrow.
Do you know all the younger people that are listening to this podcast are going to be like, man, she is old. That's what they're going to be thinking about you.
And you just wait. I probably said the same thing. Did I ever tell you this story? And then eventually we'll get into podcast or dental hygiene, but because I have another story about this. But when I was 20 or 21, I was in hygiene school or about to start clinicals or something. But I grew up doing ballet and dance and everything. Well, when I started having to pay for it out of my pocket and realized it was stupid expensive, I started to quit taking classes, but then I went and tried out for our arena football team and got on the dance team for them.
Oh.
So I was a dancer for the arena football team, on the sidelines and stuff when I was super young, right? But I was, like I said, 2021, and there were these 28, 29, 30-year-olds on the team. And I'm not kidding you. If I could go back and just wholeheartedly backhand my own self in the face for this, I remember distinctly saying to my friends, I'm like, God, I hope I can still do something like this when I'm 30.
Wow.
That's how. So I have no doubt you little youngins out there will say something just as dumb. And then you're going to look back on it and want to time warp back and smack your own self in the face.
I feel like...
Because I'm in so much better shape now than I was when I was 20.
I feel like we always want to go back and slap ourselves in the face for a lot of the things that we say and do. And I feel like at least daily I stick my foot in my mouth. At least daily.
Yeah. They go back and fix things. So the reason I wanted to say eventually we're going to get to dental hygiene is because I met somebody at the conference, the study club, who originally listened to one of our podcasts and was like, oh, yeah, that's the one that y'all don't really talk about hygiene.
Oh, my gosh. Nice. Yes, that is. That is us.
I was like, you have to get through the 10 to 15 minutes of us just being ridiculous and then get to the experts because we have really smart people on our podcast.
Yeah, not us. It's just the other people that we bring on to add some credibility.
Super smart. Yes, exactly. But apparently, like, it was one of the ones that it was just you. I was out of town.
Oh. And that's why I was talking to myself.
I was like, I don't know what y'all are talking about. I was like, try again. I swear it gets better.
Well, I mean, you can't promise that's going to get better, buddy. I mean, that's kind of a, don't oversell the podcast.
Skip to the interviews. Skip to the interview.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I've gotten a lot of good feedback about putting in the show notes when the interview was going to be. So that actually has been helpful. Good. So sorry for all you people who have gone through 80 episodes of us chit-chatting and not knowing when the interview was going to start. But,
yep.
So, yeah. I was in Kansas City this last weekend and
partying with all of our friends.
No, we were there for meetings and doing work and being diligent and striving hard to improve the profession.
Sure you were.
It was.
Sure you were. We
did have a good time. We did go out a few nights. I went and saw my cousin that lives about an hour away. And so that was kind of fun. I haven't seen him since I was an adult, which is really weird. So
yeah, that's what happens when you live across the country.
Yeah, it was. But anyway, so.
All right. So what do we have this week?
We have an interview, Michelle.
We got so many interviews.
No,
you
this
guys are going to get so tired of us being like, and day whatever of RDH under one roof.
we don't think about that in the moment when we're doing it, but we should probably start thinking about that in the future. Anyway.
When we span it out across 10 weeks.
This one is Josey Sewell. And
I love Josey.
It was a good one. And yes, I know we say this a lot, but we're going to have to come back and finish it up because we didn't have enough time to say everything that we wanted to say and ask and explore.
That's because you people are just amazing. Everyone that comes on, like, you're doing amazing things in our profession, and the journeys are just.
It's unreal.
I sit and I listen to it. I'm like, God, really?
Yeah.
So
and the passion,
cool stuff,
and the passion and the fact that they are exploring things that I would never even think to explore.
Right?
Like that doesn't come across my mind. So it's a great interview. No. We hope you guys really love it, and we'll see you on the other side of it. Hey, Michelle.
Yeah.
It's time for the interview.
Oh, but I had something else to say.
We need to let the experts talk now.
Fine.
So should we start this thing?
Yeah, we can start this thing.
Okay, it started. Josey, tell us about yourself. Who are you?
Here we are again at RDH under one roof.
Sorry, I forgot that.
Welcome
in our
to the interview
lovely,
section.
Hallway that we.
I do enjoy that we find the most random and like takeover.
And we've also had the guy right here interrupting us.
Well, you know what? This spa behind us, I'm seeing they've got hairstyling, manicures, pedicures. We should actually see if we can get in there and maybe we'll just give ourselves a pedicure.
That'd be awesome.
We should have thought about that earlier, and Mike and I could have went somewhere else while you guys do that.
Oh, no. The best part is you guys being there.
I'm sure that your feet probably need a pedicure.
Ain't that true?
When we went to the Smiles at Sea thing, Mike and I went down to Cozumel. No, it's on the same lines. Don't worry.
Oh, you did the fish thing.
We did the fish thing where they eat your dead skin.
That's
fish
a weird
feel. Have you seen that? Where they like the little fish
in a little tank.
So we did that. Mike and I did that.
How'd that feel?
Weird. Like I felt like I could like squish one of those little fishies between my toes and like.
Well, that's the thing is like you're not supposed to move, like do fast, and you're just like.
Yeah.
Does it tickle or does it hurt?
It kind of tickles at first.
It does.
It doesn't hurt.
Super
Definitely doesn't hurt.
Weird.
It just feels
have a video
bizarre.
if you want to see it ever.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Did the same? Oh, you guys did the same. Yeah. We all did it. Well, you guys did it somewhere
Separately.
else, but
Yeah.
that would have been a
I'd like
great
to go
video for us
Smile
to
Oh my
do together.
God.
I'd like
Have
to
you
give
never
that a
been?
try. I haven't been.
So tell us about the conferences that you've been to.
Oh, well, definitely like ADHA annual session, RDH Under One Roof. I think this is my 4th time coming.
Nice.
I've come a couple of times as a speaker. And that was super fun.
We'll circle back to that one.
Yeah.
We'll circle back, and that was ADHA too. And, you know, plenty of like state meetings, Chicago Midwinter,
I love that one.
ADA, you know, the big ADA, couple of, you know, just some of the big
Did you
ones.
go to those ones as a speaker also, or is it more like representing your state?
No,
or
so
what
the
happened?
meetings that I have been a speaker at were RDH Under One Roof, ADHA annual session, several different state associations, also like the Michigan Oral Health Coalition, and most recently the Autism Society of America's annual session.
Wow.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a big one.
That one was a lot of fun for me. So I have 3 children. My oldest will be 15 in September, which
Lord.
is super weird for me to have a teenager. But anyway, so Ethan's turning 15 in September. He was diagnosed with autism when he was 2.5. He developed normally. He talked early. He walked early. And then at about 22 months old, the brick walls went up.
Really?
Oh, wow.
He stopped talking. He stopped even like being able to understand what it is I was saying, where before I could say, hey, go get your shoes. We're going to go outside. You guys are going to hear all the rolling behind in the background.
It's all right. It's all part of this.
So
Little bump.
where I could say, hey, Ethan, like, go get your shoes. We're going to go to the park. He didn't, like, he just didn't understand what I was
Wow,
saying.
it's like a switch.
Yep.
Is that common to have like kind of late
It's
onset? Or?
less common, but there is regressive autism. So anyway,
Regressive
then
autism, okay.
So then we went to the doctor. We did a hearing test. We did all sorts of things. It started. I noticed it in July, and then the next April we received the diagnosis that he was on the autism spectrum. So he was 2.5.
Wow.
So anyway, bringing together, you know, what I know about being a mom of a child with severe autism. So he's 15 now. He's considered nonverbal. He uses just a few words to communicate, you know, kind of the necessities like the bathroom or drink or, you know, different foods maybe. But a lot, and like he'll sing songs, but he can never use those words in another context.
Oh, okay.
Very interesting.
And so it is interesting. So anyway, Ethan will.
Is that common?
I think that it's, you know, I can't answer that. I'm assuming
interesting.
that it is.
Yeah.
You know, because you'll hear of like echolalia where they'll repeat something over and over again.
Oh, okay.
But then they don't know how to use that anywhere else. So something with autism that's, you know, really common is they don't generalize things well. So if I eat chicken nuggets at McDonald's, I might not know that I also like chicken nuggets at the school cafeteria.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I don't know if that has anything to do with the
That's
language,
really
but
interesting. Okay.
So Ethan will probably always live with us, and that's okay. He's a really sweet boy. We're really lucky that he doesn't like throw temper tantrums or have these like major meltdowns. He's not like violent or anything like that or aggressive. He's my gentle giant. He's taller than I am. He outweighs me by 30 pounds. You know, he's just this big old teddy bear.
Yeah.
But he loves his little brother and little sister, and he loves babies, and he's just this gentle spirit. So anyway, bringing together dental hygiene and autism is something that I have loved to do, and is really important to me to train dental professionals how to work with patients with autism.
So we circled back to your speaking.
Yes,
engagement.
we did. We got there. It was a long
no, it was a
road,
good
but
one.
we
It was a
got
good
there.
one.
Most times we don't even get back to what
I
we say
know,
we're going to
so-
get back to. So that was good actually. So do you find yourself just in casual conversation with other hygienists bringing up this topic a lot, or is it something that you kind of have to find like common ground first and then you talk about it?
You know, that's a great question. It's not necessarily something that I mean, yes and no. If, people kind of know that I have a son with autism, so they'll ask questions, or like I have a CE course on dentalcare.com, and we first published it in 2013, and they last for 3 years, right? And then you have to redo it because it has to be peer reviewed. So I was really thankful they actually wanted to republish it again, so we republished it in 2016, and I was actually doing some research because I wanted to know, but in its history, it's been completed over 21,000 times.
Wow.
Holy moly.
Congrats on that.
I know.
That's so good.
Thank you. Honestly, like, it's just so humbling for me to think about that number and to think that there are kids that potentially were affected because
absolutely,
I sat down and wrote it. So anyway, that's something that I'm really proud of.
Like so many kids.
Yeah.
Because those hygienists and dentists are going to be seeing so many. So do you see it more in pediatrics? Like, is that going to be your target, like, hygiene demographic as people who see more kids? Or are you seeing more autistic not children, but adults that are then leaving that? Because I personally have never, because I've been in perio and seen elderly, like, so this is like so outside of my wheelhouse.
So right now it's probably majority children.
Okay.
When Ethan was diagnosed with autism, it was 1 in 250 children were diagnosed with autism. Today it stands at 1 in 68. And it is much more likely in boys than it is girls. So for the boys, it's actually like 1 in every 48 boys will be diagnosed with autism. So right now, it is children, but children with autism will be adults with autism. And unfortunately, there really is not a lot of services at all for adults with autism.
How did those numbers skew so differently?
So a lot of people might think like, oh, it's just because we have better diagnosis or whatever. Now, if that was the case, a lot of people have gone back, right, to look at the research, to look at medical records to see if they were, calling it something else or whatever.
Sure.
If there was always that the prevalence was there and we had missed it or whatever, then there would be something called this missing horde, right? Where they would be able to go out and find these adults that do have autism that were not diagnosed as children, and it's not there. So, one, like, yes, diagnosis and treatment and recognition of it has gotten better. It has significantly increased in the last, 15 years.
Are they postulating that to be environmental factors?
There's a lot of really interesting articles. So yes, I would say that that's part of it. Are you familiar with like the phrase like the canary in the coal mine?
No.
So the canary in the coal mine means they used to put canaries in the coal mine because they were more sensitive to the levels of oxygen.
Okay.
So when the canary would die over before it ever started affecting everybody else, right? And so they would know that they needed to get out of there. So a lot of people have called children with autism a canary in the coal mine, that our environment is so toxic and the things that we are using are affecting our genetics, and that we're seeing people diagnosed with, these developmental disorders. So when you think of autism being genetic, it could be like the combination of, the mom and dad, right, that passed on, or it could be the way that they mix together. But you can also have autism genetically, but it happens in the child after they are born.
Because the gene was expressed because of an environmental factor of some sort.
And so what's interesting is there's a really, really great TED Talk on genetics and autism. And so she talks about how they took, like, the genome or whatever, and if it's like a book of encyclopedias, right? For those of us who actually know what an encyclopedia is.
It's not Wikipedia, everyone. It's an actual book.
Super
That's
vintage.
Right. That's right. And so sometimes it might be that an entire book is missing, and that ended up that they had autism. Sometimes it might be that you open a book and a whole paragraph is missing and that child exhibited autism. Sometimes it might be a single letter in a single book of something that's just different in their genetic code that also has autism symptoms. So that's why there's
the pendulum swing as far as the spectrum?
Yeah, so that's why there is such a spectrum, is because it's not just a couple of genes, or it's not just... it could be
the book,
things.
it could be the letter.
Do you know the name of the TED Talk, by chance?
Ooh, no,
we can search it.
I could look it up for you.
Later.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great.
It's in one of my favorites. Wendy, it might be like Wendy Chung or Wendy Chang or something like that.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, it's a great one.
So you're doing these CEs. So I'm actually curious. Are there some words, like almost no words, like now we're learning, like even when we had Cassandra on, and like learning like what is offensive but used to be, it's becoming outdated, but some of us that are not in the know and working within this like culture would even know?
That's a really great question. For me, I always try to say he has autism instead of he's autistic.
Okay.
And that's just really kind of a personal thing. You know, and it just depends. Like, you know, I follow a bunch of people who have autism on social media, and they talk about what it's like to have autism. And, you know, a lot of them are actually very proud that their differences actually put them ahead in some ways, or they can be like hyper focused on something, or, you know, different things. That there can be those benefits when you are, you know, higher functioning or whatever. So, you know, I usually say he has autism rather than he's autistic, but I'm getting better about that. It doesn't bother me as much now as it used to. You know, the one word that I just, and it's not specifically related to autism, but the word retarded. Like when people are like, you know, they're talking and it's casual and they're like, oh, that's so retarded. You know what I mean? Or people will make jokes about the short bus. And so when you have a kid that does ride a short bus, those little things are kind of like, you know, could you like just not say that around me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my friend teaches, she's Title I special needs teacher, and she like flips her shit when people say that. And which I think, and honestly, I mean, I was that person at once upon a time. I also said things were gay, and I have best friends that are gay, and I'm like, because there's just, I actually have these conversations all the time, because like there's certain people that are like, you give words too much power, like kind of thing, versus then the other side of it's like, well, just learn not to use the words. Like, so there's so many arguments you could have. I don't want to say arguments, but just
Differences of opinions.
Of opinions. Right. And I don't disagree full-heartedly with either side of it. I just try to be respectful of how I would use that word and why am I using that word. You know, like why would I call something? Am I meaning that it's stupid? Well, then that's not okay. You know. So I think.
Yeah,
what else? Is there anything else? Like, or is that just kind of the?
I wanted to ask you one last question probably about that, and then I'll move on to your career, because your career to me is very interesting.
Thank you.
But tell me about more like the spectrum, because I think I heard you on, I don't know if it was Howard Farran's, someone's podcast or something like that. You were talking that just like the understanding of who and what are on the spectrum now is like broadened or something. And I might have not heard you right, but
you probably did hear me right. So there used to be lots of different names, like Asperger's was an actual diagnosis, right? And we all think of those as like the high functioning. Right. A lot of people think that they're like savant, where sometimes there are the savants, but they're not always a savant when they have Asperger's. The one, actually going back to your question, the one thing is, is he like Rain Man? Like, don't ask that. That, you know, like that's really not an accurate portrayal. But okay, so back to this. But
it is so stereotypical, right?
Yeah, it is. Or they're like, so like, what's he like really, really good at?
Like, what's his eye? He's super smart.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, he is kind of really good. He creates animation, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. So anyway, with the spectrum, so there used to be Asperger's. There used to be PDDNOS. It's not an actual label for a diagnosis anymore. So PDDNOS was pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified.
Good Lord.
Yeah, and then there was classic autism, and then there was, you know, all these different things. So now they've really bucketed those into autism spectrum disorder.
Okay.
So that's just the big umbrella. And so people, like a lot of people you might meet with adults, they're like, oh yeah, I have Asperger's, right? Because that was the diagnosis that they used then. But that's not something that people would be diagnosed now with.
So then how do you differentiate on the spectrum?
You know, that's really, really difficult. A lot of people use words like high functioning or low functioning. High functioning means like, how much more typical are you? And low functioning is you need more care. Okay. So like for Ethan, he's considered low functioning in a lot of ways. But there are lots of things that they would associate with other kids that are low functioning, like the temper tantrums or the meltdowns or things like that, that he doesn't necessarily have. So it's really like, how much can they take care of themselves? How much can they be a typical, typical grade level? Things like that. Maybe it's just they've got kind of some social struggles, don't pick up on social cues or not know how to have give and take in a conversation. That might be more of like the high functioning, where Ethan being nonverbal, that's
goes
more
on
like
the
a low
low
function.
side.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily like a number or
they do have some classifications of a number, but that's not something that people.
Do you think that that's going to kind of you'll be able to hone in on that a little bit more in the future, or do you think that that's kind of the new categories?
I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that. It's hard because, what's the purpose of it? Like, what does it change?
I guess if
Is
I
it a matter
liken
of
it to like
treatment?
cancer, like you have cancer, but you have stage 1, you have stage 4, like kind of.
They do have some classifications, 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
But it's not something people generally use when they're talking about autism, unless you're like an autism mom in an autism group, and we live, eat, and breathe autism.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So if I said Ethan has autism, level 1. Mm-hmm. Other people probably wouldn't know what that was.
Know what that actually means. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If he starts vacuuming right here, I'm going to be so pissed. One of the things I like about your family, and I feel like you guys embrace the autism very well. I feel like you guys celebrate it.
We do
I feel
try.
like you guys celebrate it as a family. That's a little bit maybe different and unique. So as a follow-up question to that, I was just, maybe you could explain to some of our listeners, like, what are some of the things that you guys try and do that may be a little bit different than other families who have someone on the spectrum?
So that's really great. So with autism, with having the level of disability that Ethan does have, every decision we make, somehow we've got to figure out how autism fits in with that, right? So like family vacations, where do you go? We go to Disneyland because they remove all of the boundaries for me. They make it super easy for me to go to Disneyland. So, you know what? Would I love to go somewhere else? Yes, but we go to Disneyland. And also because Ethan is super into Pixar, and those are like his world comes alive in Disney World.
I love that.
So, even things like that. But, so for example, my little guy, Lincoln. So I have Ethan, who's almost 15, Lila, who is 7, and Lincoln, who is 3. Nice. And so Lincoln last week got a little eye infection, right? And so it looked bad one day, and then the next day it was fine. It was pretty clear. But I took him into the doctor anyway, not because, unfortunately, I was necessarily worried about Lincoln, but I was worried if he's got pink eye, what does that mean if Ethan has pink eye and me having to hold him down every 4 hours and put drops in his eyes? And so not only just doing that, but then the distrust, and if I came to him, would he flinch, or what about, he probably wouldn't want me near his face, so brushing his teeth, shaving him, things like that. So that's one example that we always have to try to manage. We always try to go, we wait until movies have settled down to go, right, so that nobody's there, because sometimes he has a hard time. He makes little noises and he can't always control it. So we try to coordinate, okay, what's the slowest week in Disneyland of the year? Or, okay, this movie's been out for 3 weeks, we're going to go at an odd time. Or we never go to dinner at rush hour, right? It's we do early dinners, or we go lunches or whatever, because crowds are difficult. So, we're constantly adjusting. But, what we do to celebrate Ethan is, one, my husband and I both are pretty good at expressing ourselves, right? And we're pretty good with writing and speaking. And I say that humbly, but we feel like we've been given those talents because we need to be Ethan's voice. And not only are we Ethan's voice, but showing the world who Ethan is so that the world will be kinder to Ethan. So for autism awareness, we talk about, everybody needs to be aware of what it's like. How are they going to be aware if I don't let them interact with him?
Right.
So, we've never, ever said that we would be one of those families. Like, I know families who have never taken their kids to a movie, don't take them out to eat, have never taken their kids with autism on a plane. Like, they just don't do it because they're scared, where we know that there might be an adjustment. And we've had to, buy dessert for a family and hey, thanks. Like, we're loud, hey, thanks. So different things like that. But we try to write about it. We try to talk about it. And we celebrate those things. The thing about Ethan, what Ethan has taught me is that happiness is not the absence of trials or challenges. Happiness is a choice. And Ethan chooses every day to be happy, and we choose every day to be happy. Because of Ethan, I now slow down and pay attention to what does the sunbeam look like coming through the window, or what does it look like when a feather, because he'll pull up a feather and watch it, drift down, or even things like how it affects how I interact with my other kids. So, Ethan, every time we don't have parent-teacher conferences, right? They're IEP meetings. And they're always difficult. I never sleep the night before. I usually end up in tears afterwards, right? Because it's so stressful. And what's so stressful about it is you have to fill out, forms, and you have to look at his goals, and it is stark black and white, the reality of his disability. And so, you look at those things like Ethan will count to 10, 80% of the time. It's that's been his goal since he was in second grade or something. So there's a little bit of that reality check, but it's constantly begging the school to do more therapy because an hour of speech therapy a week is not enough for a kid who's nonverbal. But knowing that the school has their limitations, right? I respect and understand their side. And then to have my other children where it's Lila, she's reading, to sit and listen to her read to her brother. I just appreciate that so much more. Or to just go to the school and it's a parent-teacher conference and they're she's a great kid, she's on track, she's doing great. But having an older brother with autism has made my kids better people.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is.
Your daughter's sweet, by the way. I've seen some of yours.
Amazing.
Yeah, she's pretty cool.
How old is she?
She's 7. Going on 32. Yeah. I mean, she advocates for her brother. She's amazing, and she'll tell people, "This is my brother. He has autism. His brain's a little bit different than yours. He doesn't talk, but you need to be nice to him." And but she can get him to do things nobody else can. And what was and what was really amazing is she is the first person he ever verbally said "I love you" to without prompting.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she was 7. He was 7 when she was born, and we brought him up to the hospital to meet her, and he was a little nervous, and then he wanted to take off her clothes and look at her and whatever, and then we wrapped her back up, and she was sitting in his lap facing out, facing the same way he was, and a lot of sensory stuff. So he was rubbing his lips on her little baby head, and then he said, "you," and it was I'll say, "Ethan, I love you. Hey, love you," and he'll say, "love you." He repeats it, but we didn't really know if he knew what that meant. So they have a really amazing relationship. Him and both of them, both little ones.
So much going on. You still managed to be a very career-oriented person.
I have an amazing husband.
Tell us, let's start from the beginning. Let's start with hygiene school. Let's start with why hygiene?
So I wish that I had some romantic story to tell you about why I chose dental hygiene. I wish it was I had a really great hygienist or, that I just really cared about that. But honestly, what it came down to is I was married and already had Ethan. And it was the community college. There was a community college where we lived. There was a nursing program. There was a physical therapy program. There was the dental hygiene program. And both of my parents were nurses. They worked nights, weekends, and holidays, and they were on their feet. And I knew that dental hygiene would allow me to make decent money, work a couple days a week, and it would be a great family career. And really, for me, it was backup. because I never intended, to always be working full time. It was, my husband's the breadwinner. He takes care of those things. I want an education. I want to be able to do something. I'm motivated by, I've always wanted to be in healthcare. From the time I was 2, I said I wanted to be a doctor. So anyway, I found out what dental hygienists make, and there's a community college. Yeah. And then I fell in love with it. So.
I think that's most people's driving force is the pretty decent schedule, decent money for little, I don't want to say little education, because it's not. It's like gruesome sometimes, but for a small amount of school comparatively to other.
And I use those as I'm trying to motivate, 17, 18-year-olds to, hey, go to college. This is a great career. In fact, a guy that was checking us in today, I was like, hey, what are you doing with your life? Come be a hygienist. It's great. Yeah. So we need more hygienists.
More male hygienists. That's right. Hygienist.
So, okay. So
went to hygiene school. Yep. I went to San Juan College in Farmington, New Mexico. And believe it or not, I sat right next to Sarah Thiel from CE Zoom in hygiene school.
Can only imagine.
Did she actually talk as much then as she did now?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. How did you learn anything?
That wasn't something she was born with? She probably was born speaking.
We gave golden awards. We gave out super silly awards at our pinning ceremony. Just makes me laugh. Mine was most likely to keep my plate full, because I was SADA president, and I was a mom, and I was also a leader of a young women's group at church, and doing all these things. But Sarah, they gave her this really nice little spa kit, and it was basically keep your feet clean because you're always putting your foot in your mouth kind of a thing.
Oh, she's never told us that one.
Love you, Sarah.
Thank you for that. That's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
So yes, so many fun memories of Sarah in hygiene school.
So in spite of her, though, you graduated.
In spite, yes, no, that girl, she's always been amazing.
She is.
So yeah, graduated in 2007. Worked full time, right out of school. Then I worked full time. One dentist who was 1 year out of school and had bought a practice, and I worked there as the only hygienist, and he'd bought it from an older gentleman and was up to my eyeballs in perio and cleaning that up. So that was really great for my clinical skill.
Right.
Made tons of mistakes, with how I communicated with patients.
Students, you hear that? You're going to make mistakes.
And I don't know about you guys, but there was a couple of kind of negative experiences that happened in my, just not having experience and saying something really stupid, whatever I said. Anyway, but those things kind of haunt you.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got to sit in your soul for a little bit.
Yeah.
Until you forgive yourself.
I think if you're a good hygienist, they should. You know what I mean? I wouldn't give those experiences up, though.
Oh, yeah,
you know what I mean? Because that way, how many dumb things we said on the podcast, too? There are so many things I'm I wish I wouldn't have said that.
I know, I'm sad sometimes this is documented forever.
but at the same time, I feel like you learn and you grow from those types
of
serious, stupid things. So
we just are doing it for thousands to watch us be stupid and learn.
So have hope, everyone out there.
Yeah.
Be stupid sometimes. It's okay.
It's all
so when did you
growth.
start speaking?
So a year after hygiene school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was super fun. So I did table clinics, the year that I graduated at ADHA. And the partner that I was going with, she had almost last minute she couldn't go because she was going to do a working interview. So there's this woman at ADHA, and I just went back and forth with her, whatever, can I go by myself? What do I need to do? I didn't know all those things. So I did table clinics, and then the next year I got a phone call, and she was like, hey, we're doing a course for the student track, and it's on finding the perfect job, resume skills, interview, whatever. And we're looking for a recent graduate to come and be part of somebody else's course. And I just loved you last year when I met you, and I would love for you to do it. And I was like, that was my first experience in networking, right? I had no idea that she thought that I would be able to do that, right? It was just emails and conversations, whatever. So anyway, it was part of somebody else's course. I just had 10 minutes and got up and talked about what I thought about dental hygiene. And really my message even from then has been, take charge of your career. Take yourself
Amen.
seriously, and you know what I mean, invest in yourself, and don't.
This career is what you make it.
It is, and there's so many opportunities.
There are.
So then the next year they asked me to come back and teach it myself.
Nice.
So I taught that for a couple of years, and that is when I met Jackie Sanders. And so Jackie Sanders, she had just started at Sunstar, and she has been my mentor since then, and have done lots of stuff with her, and she has been such a blessing to my life.
Nice.
But so anyway, I did taught that at ADHA for a couple years, and then 1 year under one roof I did alternative careers for dental hygienists, and then I did a little bit of speaking later, more on autism, because at that point there were a couple of speakers that were well known for autism, and
fresh blood is good.
Yeah.
So for like new grads and students, what are like some key points that you kind of drive home in, like little pearls when treating a patient that has autism?
Well, take my course, dentalcare.com.
Yes.
It's free. Go there. No, really, you have to change the way that you think about what their experience is like.
Okay.
So for them, words are not functional.
Okay.
And so it's more about what are they feeling sensory-wise, the lights, the smells, the moving of the chair, things like that. And so, one, just taking it slow and walking them through it. Really, you have to, a lot of them have incredible memories. So if you just push them and traumatize them right in the beginning, then it's really difficult for them to overcome that. So it's better to take like 10 slow appointments, just doing a little bit at a time, knowing that the first time they may not even sit in the chair. But the biggest thing is positive reinforcement. Okay. And so correlating that positive reinforcement as closely in timing to that behavior as possible. So if you say, sit in my chair, as soon as their little bottom hits that chair, great job, you sat in the chair, even if they hop right up. Okay. Right? So it's all about that positive reinforcement of the behaviors that you want.
Because you would almost feel like I'd be hesitant because I don't want to be condescending. You know, like that would be my initial thought. Like, I don't want to like treat them like, especially if it was a 15-year-old, I'm treating him like he's kind of 2, like for the first time in the chair. So trying to get over your own issues with that would be a big one, at least for me, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to take it based on their different cognitive levels and, you know, whatever. But no, it's about desensitization. It's about exposing them to that. So there's lots of different things. Like there are videos that they could watch. There's an app it's My Healthy Smile, and it has little social stories, like little videos and walkthrough, and they can watch that over and over again before the visit. Or I will send home a pair of gloves, the fluoride brush, the little Profi angle, anything that you can send home with them that's disposable for them to look at and touch, and mom and dad expose them to. That's always helpful. And then just being calm, letting them know what's coming. Not talking, and also not talking too much. So
talking when necessary, but not trying to create a conversation.
And practicing the pause, right? So if I say, open your mouth, think about when you're working with little kids and you're like, open your mouth, open, open, open. Let's see it big like an alligator. Every time like if I say open your mouth, they've got to think about that. And if I already jump back in to say open your mouth again, they're starting back at the beginning of that sentence, like trying to work their way through it. So it might be open your mouth. Oh, there it is. Good job, buddy. Nice work. You know, things like that.
Wow, really great suggestions. Because again, it's like you have to retrain yourself. Like
it's very different.
Yeah. But you know, even with when you're saying like on the spectrum, like you could have some adults that are very high, and it almost like makes sense now, like why the way you've been behaving and how the appointments aren't going so well. And now you're like, oh, if I rethink this, like maybe I can make some changes and make it a little bit easier for all of us in the dental office.
Yeah. Things like doing the appointment first thing in the morning, where the drill's not going, the sterilizer's not humming, the music's not on, decreasing that sensory information, that's really helpful. Sometimes it may be that you're going to brush their teeth while they sit, in a different chair. But the thing about it is once you gain their trust, that memory also works. That really good memory works in your behalf. And also, once they understand a routine, they will stick to that routine. So don't you forget to floss if we floss after we polish, because that will mess me up.
Oh.
So keeping your routine consistent as much as possible, even if they've had a really great experience, go back to that same operatory. If they've had a really bad experience, don't go back to that operatory.
So it's really also keeping really good notes on your end.
Absolutely.
Like, this worked today. This was the way that we did it. I used maybe even this flavor of Profi paste.
Yes.
Or
taste is a really
color,
big deal.
Profi angle, or something like that. That's really good too.
Well, and I even tell parents, if they have a hard time, if the kids fight to brush their teeth, well, where are you brushing them? Well, in the bathroom. Try doing it in the living room, and sometimes that's enough.
Just getting them out of that environment that maybe they're associating something that's not fun. Getting them. That's really great, though. But this is, the special needs population, I would put that with Alzheimer's patients, dementia patients.
So much about Alzheimer's is similar to autism.
And it's very, I was going to say, like, that's how I would treat my grandfather.
Yeah.
Like, switching it up or learning to change my words or request or how I say it or where I say it.
And something that you just reminded me with Alzheimer's, because I sat in an Alzheimer's course as a hygienist, a couple of years ago, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, there are so many parallels with autism, so many parallels. But things like Ethan might learn a word today and you're like, yes, he learned something.
But tomorrow,
it does not mean he's going to remember it tomorrow.
Or
and
in
sometimes
an hour.
we have to work that hard to learn it again. So it's all about repetition and consistency.
And checking your frustrations.
Oh yeah.
Because I would ask my grandfather, like, what's your zip code? Can you tell me all the time? And I'm like, we do this every day. Why? So just check it and adapt. I know it's shocking that I get frustrated with anybody.
Yeah, very shocking. We're about time.
Okay.
I really want to. We're gonna have to have you come back again on the show.
Maybe we should do a CE course with us.
Ooh, yeah. We didn't get to talk about my job. My job is so awesome.
I don't want to say that's what I really want to talk about, because I'm a business person, and that's really, how
we
it
can
is.
geek out about data.
Yeah. Oh my
KPIs.
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
Business structure.
That's key performance
I literally almost fell out of this
indicators.
chair because I fell asleep.
Yeah. But we will, let's do that maybe soon. We might have to do it over Skype or GoToMeeting, which I hate doing.
It's
but
not the worst. We've had very good ones.
It's the worst.
With you breaking the SD card, it really challenged how we were
Shut your face.
bringing these interviews to people. And
Anyway.
that wasn't the worst thing in the world.
Anyway, I'm really sorry we're going to have to cut this short.
No.
I mean, at 42 minutes. It's short. But thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah,
with us.
thank you.
What great
You're
information.
awesome.
I really think
You're
we
the
should do a
best.
CE course, though.
I would love
That would
to.
be great.
Would love to. No,
We can if you want. Don't look at me like that.
That's something that I haven't really advertised or gone out and done, but it's something that I'm definitely interested in trying to do more of, because it's super easy, right? Like, I've got all the material, just need to do it.
only
Let
you had
us
a
be the
friend.
vehicle for your information.
I love it.
If only if you had friends that had a vehicle for it, and also a friend who could track it.
Yeah,
and
all those
I
things.
know.
I mean,
You know what? It was so funny. This lady, I have to tell. I'm sorry.
No,
really
keep-
fast story.
keep going.
Get on the shuttle, right? And I look over at these two ladies, and I'm like, they're so hygienists, right? And I said, "Are you ladies hygienists?" And they go, "Well, yeah." And I was hoping they automatically knew I was one, but they didn't. So maybe I don't look like the hygienist. But anyway, they're like, "How did you know?" And I said, "Because I'm a hygienist." And they were like, "Oh, you are?" Yeah, I'm a hygienist. Anyway, they were like, "Did you come to this conference by yourself?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but I have so many friends here." And they're like, "Oh, what, from school?" I'm like, from my worldly travels, like, I mean, like, you come here, right? And like, you can't even get through the thing because it's like,
oh my gosh, it's so
like a
overwhelming.
family reunion. Oh my gosh, so many wonderful
best.
people here. I love this event.
Another plug for networking and coming to these things and meeting people. And
well, even like social media, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, Emily Bogey and I were friends on Facebook, but we've never met in person. And she walks in the elevator and she goes, "Hi," and I was like, "Where's Facebook friends?" She's like, "Oh yeah."
Well, and if I could talk to you about that, though, it's like you have to understand the first maybe 1 or 2 conferences aren't going to be as we're describing them, because we've been doing this for a while, right?
So, 10 years into this.
Yeah. So
and lots and lots and lots
steps.
of conferences.
But 10 years,
Right,
do you
Mike?
think that would be
Baby
cut down
steps.
now with social media?
I think so, but you know what? I think even with having social media there's an art to networking.
Oh, yeah. And
And
don't be afraid.
There could be a CE just on like the art of networking, right? And what that actually means, where it's not you just walking around telling everybody what you're looking for, right? It's just, it's different than that. And as big as the dental industry is, it's very small. And so it's all about developing those positive relationships and supporting other people.
Yes.
Right? When you support other
I think
people, they'll
it's-
support you
I agree.
I think that's
and have
key.
you on their podcast.
Yeah.
It's like, please just come. This is a plug for everyone to be on our podcast.
Yeah,
basically.
really. There's still, I sent a few emails. I won't say any names, when they were like, "I'm sorry, you're what?" I was like, "Oh, excuse me."
I'm sorry. We've been doing this for almost 2 years now. You should know who we are.
At least I haven't heard.
You guys are all
podcast.
so it was super fun because one of my hygienists, she was on the beach, right? And she'd done a social media post like, "Oh, I'm on a beach and I'm listening to this podcast," and it was your podcast. And I had to be like, "Oh yeah, well, I'm friends with Andrew."
Oh,
So that was awesome.
you know, one thing that our listeners don't know about is when you abandoned me and moved across okay, this will be the last time I bring it up, this conference. It's like 8 times
This
now.
conference, it's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Should we just tell them?
So
ahead.
first of all, when you moved to Vancouver, you took a job.
I was in training for a company that did practice management, so I did also do lots of business management and practice management there. We could geek out about that too.
And I got really excited. And we met up for lunch one time. And we had sushi. Yep. And it was pretty good. I enjoyed it.
It's good.
So happy for you.
And then we didn't talk for about 8-9 months or whatever, and then you left. Something like that happened. I don't know. I can't remember exactly how that story went, but I feel like I want to put the blame on you.
Bitter about it.
There was, you know, things got really, really rough for me. There were some dark days there, and so I was not myself.
Because we were sharing the same city?
No,
Oh, okay.
no. I was in a difficult position.
Gotcha.
Difficult job.
So what
And
happens
so-
it's even the best of us then?
Yes.
Oh, that's
no.
interesting to know.
Best of you. I wouldn't say us. As if
The
you
best
were
of-
including yourself or
Best
myself.
of us in the profession is what I meant. I wasn't including myself in being
Sometimes
the
you
best,
end
but
up
whatever.
in a difficult job,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah, yeah.
miserable,
Wear
and you
you
have to
out.
figure out what to do. And
Yeah.
when you have a hard time, like, you know, when you're like, you know, so excited for Friday because you get off, and then like come Sunday you have
wanna cry.
anxiety,
Yeah.
and you start, you know what I mean?
The
And you
Sundays,
start,
the Sunday scaries, is that what they call it?
yeah, I don't
Right?
know. That's a
Sunday
great name,
scaries.
but when you have that, it affects everything in your life. No
It
matter
really
how much
does.
you're like, oh, I'm not bringing it home with me. You absolutely do.
You are.
I didn't realize that until I got my really great job, and how different it affects everything, your family.
I feel like Mike and I have both been there too. I feel like we came from a place that was a little dark. And now it's like sunshine, and like
I
we can
know.
hear the birds chirping. You're like,
You
what's going on?
appreciate it, yeah.
So anyway, so that'll be the end of the time.
So I
bring that up.
moved from. You didn't really
That's
close
fine.
this story up.
I'm
I
trying to get
moved
over
from
it.
Vancouver,
Thanks for
Washington to
helping him out.
North
It's like
Carolina in February for the position that I have
Where'd you
now.
move?
Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Oh, you're like close to me now.
Yes.
Are you a Steeler?
moved
Is it a
here.
friend?
I was just thinking about it.
Okay.
So
She
I'm
steals all
sorry,
my friends.
but you know what? I still own my house in Vancouver.
Are you renting it out?
Yes, and so someday, hopefully, we'll
back
be
on
neighbors
that side.
again.
If you want to move back, because what we're trying to do is Kara lives there, right? Kara
I
RDH,
know,
and I live
yeah.
there, and we'll get, maybe you to move back there, and get Michelle to move there. Maybe
You're
Sarah
in
will
Florida,
move back.
right?
I'm in South Carolina, in Charleston.
Oh, yours. Oh gosh, see, I'd like to live in
See?
Charleston. Yeah.
I ain't going nowhere.
Jocelyn's great.
We'll talk about that another time. It's just like when I asked Allison, hey, can we move down to Florida? She's like, no. I'm like, okay, we'll table that for now.
We'll table that one.
We'll circle back. 2 years later, I'll ask her again. She still says no, but we'll circle back.
It's gray and gloomy.
In Vancouver?
Yeah.
So you didn't like it so much because you came
No,
from.
I loved it. The gray. You know what? It wasn't even the gray. It was the short days in the winter. They're so much shorter. So when it gets dark at 3:30, and it's not light until like 8:30, that's when it's hard.
Yeah,
that was hard.
But when everybody's complaining about when it's stormy, like it was stormy, this week in North Carolina, and it was gray, and everybody's like, "Oh, it just ruins my mood." I was like, I kind of feel at home.
Yeah, yeah.
And my daughter, now I have to turn on like a song that has like rain on it because
she's used to that.
She's used to it. Yeah, she's like,
cute.
"Oh, I can go to sleep now." We've really gone off on a tangent.
Yeah,
we have.
That's okay.
But that's it. And that's all for this episode. But thank you so much.
Yes.
We'll have you back.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
You're the best.
You're the best. No, you're the best.
No, keep going.
No, you're the best.
Keep telling us how good we are. That's great. Listeners, I want to tell you a story. A story I found on the web, which makes this Scaling the Web with Andrew. Okay, this week in Scaling the Web with Andrew, one of the questions that has come up a couple times is about ethics, right? And so I've thought like many times in the practice that we are in, the practice that I am in, I think that we practice like super ethical dentistry, right? And I know that a lot of people think that they practice ethical dentistry. And one of the things that always kind of like was nagging in my head was you don't want to remove enamel unless you have to, right? That's kind of the rule.
Okay, yeah.
Like why? I mean, why would you? But then
I wasn't really sure what you're talking about for a hot second.
Oh, it's called restorative. I know you didn't really cover a lot of restorative. Enamel's the outer layer of the tooth, and sometimes doctors have to drill into it.
I really prefer working with symptom.
Okay. Okay. So one of the things that I was thinking about that, because one of my doctors had mentioned it, as far as ethics is concerned, is aesthetics or cosmetic dentistry. And so I looked up an article. It is spiritofcaring.com/public/262.cfm. And I'll put that in the show notes so you guys can get to it. But it was written way back in 2005. And the question is, when is cosmetic dentistry ethical and when is it not ethical? So I'm going to read a few things to you guys. It says, Gordon Christensen has raised this question for all dentists in his article. I have had enough, but particularly dentists who specialize in cosmetic dentistry. When is cosmetic dentistry ethical and when is it not ethical? The bubble is going to burst on dentists who have limited their practices to cosmetic dentistry. In 5 to 7 years, there will be many angry patients. Now, remember, this was from 2005.
I was going to say, okay,
Yeah.
because 2008 is when cosmetic dentistry really took a hit.
So in 5 to 7 years, there will be many angry patients who have cosmetic dental work that has failed or is failing. All dental work fails, and cosmetic work fails faster than other restorative dentistry. Even though the dentist has told the patient in every way he or she can think that cosmetic dentistry will wear out, most patients will not hear that statement. They will blame the dentist for the failure. However, the ultimate sin is not the dental work failed, but that the dentist failed the patient in not communicating, diagnosing, and treatment planning properly. The bubble will burst sooner for all dentists who unethically sell cosmetic dentistry to their patients. This will lead to disaster for these dentists and their patients. Cosmetic dentistry is the most discretionary procedure in dentistry. When the economy goes into a stall or a decline, again, 2005, and the big crash, whatever, was 2008, 2009. So it's just a few years ahead of its time. So when the economy goes into a stall or a decline, discretionary dentistry will be the first thing that patients elect to not do or to postpone. Or when word reaches the media or lawyers there's a problem with cosmetic dentistry, those dentists who unethically sell it will be in trouble. While the dentist that has hung his or her hat on cosmetic dentistry is sitting at their desk looking at white space in their appointment book, the wise dentist that has resisted the temptation to, quote, specialize or sell will be busy doing remedial, maintenance, and complete dentistry. The goal of this type of dentistry is to maximize comfort, function, health, and aesthetics. So they go into what they suggest that the dentists, what they should be doing. So rather than being a cosmetic dentist, being a complete dentist, it says be a decathlon dentist, as Bob Barkley recommended, not a single event cosmetic dentist. So it's very interesting that this article decided to instead of talking about whether or not it's ethical, it went right into the business. And the reason why I stuck with this, even though I knew that the topic was misleading, is because isn't it funny that when it comes right back down to it, it's all about the business model of dentistry.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
And so the communication on our end as hygienists has to be to be able to communicate to the dentist on a way that they're going to understand it.
Which is business. Yeah, but haven't we talked about this before where dentists typically are more emotional, but they have to be business oriented because they're running a practice.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you really get down to it, nobody went into it for business. They went into it to help people.
I mean, I would say as a larger hygiene population, this is just speculation. I don't have numbers to support this. I know a lot of dentists that went in it for not good purposes other than to make money.
Yeah, there's probably that out there. But I think the most, because Dr. Stefano did a survey once, and a lot of his course is based upon how emotionally driven dentists really are. If you say, will you get a good review saying financial wise, or will you get a thank you for making me feel better, look better, have better self-esteem? They take that every day of the week over the financial side of it. I
don't know. Well, I'm sure he has his numbers. I like to see that and dissect it a little bit, but it's a good point. It's good, something to think about for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, anywho, that's good though. Good one.
It's about that time. Grab your blanket and a glass of wine. It's story time with Michelle.
So, I have my book this time.
Yay.
For story time with Michelle, brought to you by Pinot Noir. I'm continuing to read The Communication Skills for Dental Health Care Providers. However, we're getting closer to the end, and I just got a giant book from our dear friend, Trisha O'Hare.
Hi, Trisha. Shout out to Trisha.
Yes, which is all of her perio reports. So I might be pulling from that one every now and again because it is huge, and I'm so excited to read it. I cannot wait.
That's awesome.
So, going into managing lifespan challenges, which is chapter 10 of this communication skills book. So, why planning for lifespan challenges matter? In theory, patient-provider communication would be much more effective if providers focused their practice on patients with whom they communicated well. To a limited extent, this happens. Some dentists specialize. This might be piggybacking off of some of your stuff.
And we did not try to do that, folks. That just happened.
I know. Some dentists specialize in certain specializations, pediatric dentistry or prosthodontics, target patients who have much in common. In practice, however, 85% of dentists do not specialize. As a result, most patients are treated at family practices where the staff treats patients of all ages. Treating patients of diverse ages is a sign of a healthy practice. It shows that the patients who differ widely in age from the practice staff are nevertheless satisfied with the care they receive. It also indicates that patients are loyal to the practice as they age, and such loyalty is both a cause and consequence of effective patient-provider communication. Patient-centered care is much easier to achieve if patients can see the same providers over time and develop relationships with them. The continuity of care benefits from both patients and providers. Patients benefit from the reduction in uncertainty. They learn to navigate a practice's physical and bureaucratic environment, and they learn to anticipate the way certain providers communicate. Providers benefit because they gain a better sense of patients' capabilities and motivations, and they are able to track conditions over time. In short, even if providers wanted to confine their practice to healthy adults with generous insurance policies, those providers who were most clinically and communicatively competent would find their patients growing older and having children, as healthy patients so often do. In addition to the practical reasons for developing communication skills to accommodate lifespan challenges are professional and ethical reasons. For a variety of reasons related to access and cost, oral health disparities exist for both the young and the old. Dental care is the most prevalent unmet health need among U.S. children. The most common childhood disease in dental caries and dental-related illnesses causes children to miss more than 51 million school hours each year. Oral health disparities are even more acute for low-income children. Among seniors, 30% of those 65 years or older are edentulous, and 23% have severe periodontal disease. Oral health disparities are even more accurate for low-income seniors and those in long-term care facilities. So reducing these disparities will require concerted efforts on multiple fronts. Communicating with children and seniors in a way that facilitates restorative treatment and promotes preventive care is crucial to minimize such disparities. The chapter first addresses communication with those who often accompany children or seniors to their appointments. The next section describes communication challenges with young patients and skills to deal with them. So I'm just going to bebop it to the back here. So when we look at the chapter checklist and we're talking about parents and guardians of children, some of the things that they point out is that you have to rely on observation and listening skills. You need to remain flexible. Find a place for the patient or the guardian to sit or stand in the operatory. I hate this.
too.
Divide attention and comments between the patient and the parent or guardian. State the need for cooperation from everyone in the operatory. Remember that the child is the patient and address the child directly. Seek rapport before collecting the health history. Conduct the interview with the child as much as possible, and teach the child to take responsibility for his or her oral health. I just brushed my nephew's teeth before I left the house with baking soda because they were yellow.
And then how did they look afterwards? Better?
They definitely, a little bit better for sure. They just needed a good scrub. But he was like, this is like chalk, Auntie. Chalk. I was like, sorry, kiddo. Determine the cause of any injuries and take steps to minimize reoccurrence. Ask the parent to wait in the reception area whenever his or her presence interferes with information gathering. Ask the fearful parent to wait in the reception area. Encourage the parent or guardian to participate in live modeling of appropriate dental behaviors. Address trust, skill, and anticipate pain. When we're working with spouses, children, and caregivers of seniors, you want to determine the relationship between the escort and the senior and determine how involved the patient wishes the escort to be. Shake hands with the escort and introduce yourself, and ask the patient whether he or she would like the escort present in the operatory. Observe the patient's response to gauge the level of escort participation the patient is comfortable with, and understand that the level of escort participation depends on the patient's capabilities and the escort's motivations in the relationship between patient and escort. When we're dealing with anxious children, you want to set a goal of training the child patient in how to interact with the dental provider. So resist temptation to scold and describe, observe problems, but emphasize the benefits of preventive behaviors. You want to smile and interact enthusiastically, preview the examination, and explain the rationale for what will happen. Show the child various instruments and allow him or her to handle some of the equipment. Play with a mask to distract or reassure the frightened child. Practice empathy, communication. Use a firm and loud voice. Make short appointments and encourage exploration and cooperation. You want to negotiate, which is interesting. Enlist parental help to alleviate anxiety or foster cooperation. God, I am so glad I don't deal with children. Patients with autism, which is so great since we just had Josey on.
Yay.
Learn as much as possible about the patient's behavior and communication patterns. Remain flexible in your approach to communicate and treatment. Practice positive reinforcement through immediate verbal praise and giveaways, and she definitely talked about that. Issue short and clear commands. Ignore inappropriate behavior as much as possible, and use tell, show, do to instruct the autistic patient. Take frequent breaks. Ask the parent or a dental team member to hold the patient's hand, and ask the parent to restrain the child. If necessary, suggest the use of stabilization device in a positive way and secure consent. Recognize that the autistic patient is likely to require behavioral management techniques. And this is what Josey mentioned, that she doesn't like saying like the autistic patient. She rather is the patient with autism, right? That's how she put it. Involve the family in treatment, provide a supportive and structured environment, and maintain continuity of the dental team and return visits. And she did emphasize that as well. When we're talking about senior patients, we want to acknowledge the senior patient may have items he or she wishes to discuss. Avoid treating the senior patient with condescending or paternalism. Cultivate empathy for the senior patient through perspective taking, and include other healthcare providers in treatment planning. Patients with dementia or Alzheimer's, which is definitely, it just talks about like you really need to have speech construction. You got to really have a certain speech style as far as like speaking slowly, clearly, in a lower tone. I saw something the other day, and it was talking about how instead of arguing, you have to redirect. And I mean, it's honestly, I feel like a lot of things that you would do for a child would be what you were going to do for a patient with Alzheimer's. So all good information. Again, I encourage people to get the communication skills for dental health providers and get right with communication, y'all.
Do we have another chapter next week, or do we have... Yep. Okay, how many do we have left?
We have 2 more.
2 more.
Managing hearing and speaking challenges and managing stigma challenges.
I'm not going to lie. I wasn't excited when you told me that this is what we're going to be talking about, but I am actually kind of glad we're doing this now. I'm a little disappointed. A lot from it. Yeah, and I'm kind of disappointed there's only 2 more. So we'll spread that out over the 2 episodes, though.
Yeah, for sure.
But then we have Trisha's stuff, too, so that'll be good.
Yeah. Andrew, one day you're going to trust my skills and my choices. I mean, you have constantly been like, who are we interviewing? Why are we interviewing this person? And then afterwards been like, oh, my God, that was amazing. You have no trust in my
I apologize to all of our past interviews that Michelle has now outed me out on not knowing who they were or why we were interviewing them.
Well, we don't run in the same circles either.
We really don't.
Not at all.
I'll trust you one of these days, Michelle. Maybe.
One day.
Not with my life, though.
Oh, that would be dumb.
I know.
Yeah, don't do that.
I know. Probably. Yeah. Anyway. All right. I think that's it for this episode.
Yeah. So everyone have a great week, and we will see you next week, or talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.